I've been doing this for a while, and one of the things that occurs to me is that making predictions is a tough business. In fact, this really popular, well-known French guy wasn't able to get all of his predictions to work either, and he's world famous. So keep that in mind, and in that spirit, here we go. Last year when I presented this, I got a lot of criticism. I got a lot of people saying, but Neal, this doesn't make sense. It needs to be in buckets. So what I realized was, actually, there are buckets. There's 3 different buckets for best cities in the US. So what you're trying to do, right, has to match with one of the buckets. Well, this is a cash flow bucket. And by cash flow, I don't mean the best cities for cash flow today. I mean the best cities for cash flow over the next 2 or 3 years, because these cities are seeing incredible growth in rents. Their rents are projected to grow a lot. So you might buy into a city that really is not a cash flowing city on day one, but if it gets an 8% or 9% cash flow increase for 2 years, you've got a cash flowing property. Even 6% for 2 years will do it for you. So that's the kind of cities that are in this orange bucket. Then you've got the hottest cities, right? What does hottest mean? Hottest doesn't mean the highest rent growth. Hottest doesn't mean the highest price growth. What hottest simply means is homes fly off the shelves. You get a bunch of offers. You get cash offers. You get emotional buyers, right? People who live in the San Francisco Bay Area are nodding their heads saying, oh, yeah, that sounds like us. And yeah, you're going to see California cities in there. So that's the hottest group. And you notice that different providers are ranking different things, right? So to the left, you see Yardi Matrix, an apartment list, and Trulia showing the rent growth metros. And then in the hottest section, you see Zillow and Realtor.com. And then in the right section, now we're talking about price increases. Now, once again, I said this at the beginning, this is a single family webinar, even though I don't buy single families. And so what they're predicting, what Forbes and Trulia and Realtor.com are saying is these are the cities that are going to have the highest price growth in 2018. All right? So those are our 3 buckets. Now, you're going to notice that as I bring up the cities, I am not going to talk about all of them. And that should be a hint to you. The hint is that city is not coming up again. It only came up once, and I'm only interested in patterns. I want to see cities that come up 2, 3, 4, or even 5 times in this list. Those are the ones that I'm going to talk about. But I'm going to make some exceptions because I have a California audience. All right, so at number 10 for rent growth, Inland Empire, Fresno, Las Vegas. It's really nice to see California cities, that have potential rent growth, because we all know there's not going to be any rent growth when you buy it, but I think that there's going to be rent growth over the next 2 years, both in the Inland Empire and Fresno, especially because Fresno, I have validation. Both Trulia and Apartment List think that Fresno is going to have high rent growth, which is great for me. I own 10 properties in and near Fresno. So Twin Cities also is interesting. That's St. Paul and Minneapolis. But what we see above that is Los Angeles. So Los Angeles at this point has high rent growth. So those of you that want to buy there and are worried about the lack of cash flow, you shouldn't be worried. Tampa, and it's going to show up a number of times. Dallas. Now, what's next to it is also Dallas. Where is Arlington? Well, Arlington's a tiny little city right next to Dallas. So to me, that is really Dallas and then Dallas Metro. And keep an eye on those. You're going to see them again. Salt Lake City, you're going to see a lot of times. Utah happens to be my favorite state in the U.S. for real estate investment. And you're going to see that over and over again. At number 6, you see Tampa, and then you see Deltona, right? So this one right here is very interesting to me because it is not a metro. Where's Deltona? Well, it's 15 miles from Orlando. So this is actually Orlando Metro. It is the beginning of the Orlando machine that you're going to see rolling throughout this page. Also, Vancouver is very interesting because it is not Vancouver, Canada. It's Vancouver in Washington. A few months ago, the Canadians decided to charge a very large tax on foreigners investing in Vancouver real estate. It was getting overheated. There was a bubble, so they charged a tax. Well, half of Vancouver is on our side of the border. Well, the Chinese started to come over and started investing in Vancouver. And for that reason, I would be surprised if I don't see Vancouver in the future in the blue portion, the fix and flip, because when you have cash buyers, fix and flips make all the sense in the world. So if you're into Vancouver, this is a great time to buy. So Phoenix, and this is one of my favorite cities, I just want to say I'm very disappointed. This is the only time you're going to see Phoenix in this graph. And this is a very powerful metro. I love it. But I got to say, this is my big surprise. One and only one entry for Phoenix. Salt Lake City, once again, showing up for cash flow. Colorado Springs showing up. And when Colorado Springs shows up, you almost immediately see Denver. Denver and Colorado Springs are 70 miles apart. Denver's become expensive, right? It still has a lot of cash flow. It still has a lot of growth to go. But because of that, Colorado Springs is growing. You can actually live in Colorado Springs and work in Denver. So we're seeing those two go up together. Riverside is going to show up a couple times. Los Angeles once again. And then on to the bigger ones. Las Vegas, Orlando again. Milwaukee, I'm not sure about that one. Orlando, one more time. Notice a trend. Right down here was Deltona, Orlando Metro, then Orlando again, then Orlando again. You start seeing a trend there. Well, here's a bigger trend than Orlando. At number one for rent growth, unquestionably the best rent growth city in America, Sacramento wins 3 times, a number one, a number two, and a number one again. Fabulous city. The rent growth in 2018 in Sacramento will be astonishing. In fact, it is so high that it's almost double the rent growth of the cities that are in the number 10 slot. So we're looking at between 8 and 9% annualized rent growth, at least for the next 2 years for Sacramento. Couldn't recommend it more if you live in California, want to invest in Sacramento. This is a great time to invest. By the way, I don't have any investments in Sacramento, but I think it's a great metro to invest in. So let's look at fix and flip, right? So here you're going to see some big cities, right? Because a lot of big cities have a lot of rich investors, have a lot of cash buyers. So you're going to see a bunch of big cities. Dallas in the past actually has been up in that list, so I'm surprised to see it down there. But what's interesting is Stockton. Nobody thinks of Stockton as a flip market, right? You could just go to Stockton and buy homes, right? Well, no, things have changed. At this point, Stockton has become interesting to people that are doing flips. And that is because Bay Area investors are looking for yield and are overbidding in Stockton, which is why it makes sense to buy cheap homes in Stockton and improve them on the fix and flip side. And this is not the only time you're going to see Stockton. Portland and Denver, 2 very traditional fix and flip markets doing really well. Nashville, another fix and flip market. And then one more time, that city, Sacramento. 3 years ago, if I would have told people that Sacramento would be in the top 10 for fixing and flipping, no. This is a city that people are like, oh, this is the worst part of California. No, people. The Bay Area costs are driving hundreds of thousands of people to Sacramento. Google it, read about it, read the articles. The Sacramento is the Bay Area's rent pressure valve. And because of that, it's not just becoming a rental market, it is becoming a fix and flip market. Denver comes up again, not surprised. Santa Rosa comes up simply because of the fires that we had last year. Austin and San Diego, 2 very common fix and flip markets. San Francisco, it's a perennial fix and flip market. Charlotte comes up again. Also keep an eye on North Carolina cities. They're going to show up a lot. Colorado Springs, right? So when you see Denver, you're going to see Colorado Springs alongside with it. Seattle comes up very often. Again, a perennial fix and flip market, one of my favorites. But Vallejo, right? You live in the Bay Area. Those of you that have attended my Bay Area version of this presentation that happens in April know that last year I couldn't get over Vallejo. I felt like Vallejo was the right place to invest. And I'm delighted to see that today it's top 10 in the fix and flip area. Imagine how many people are running towards Vallejo and that people are willing to buy 50 or 80-year-old homes in Vallejo and flip them. I don't think that trend will go down. In fact, I'd be surprised if it wasn't higher up in the list next year. And then we have Raleigh, another excellent metro, and then San Jose, a powerhouse metro, fix and flip. San Jose is landlocked. San Jose is running out of places where it can possibly build. So there's absolutely no surprise that it comes in at 2. In fact, it also comes in at number 1. So San Jose, San Francisco, unquestionably the best metros in the U.S. for fixing and flipping in 2018. And now, price growth, right? Where is the highest price growth? Well, it's not in Sacramento, it's not in San Jose, and it's not in San Francisco. So you see Sac again, at number 10. It's a little disappointing to see it at number 10 because previously on the appreciation side, it's been much higher. And the story here is this, guys. When you see stuff on the green side, over time, it'll drop, right? It'll kind of have a few good years, and then a city will drop out, and then it'll move over to the orange side on the left. And that's how things go. Sacramento has been higher up in the appreciation list, and now it's falling a little bit, but that doesn't mean that it's a weak city to invest in. It just means that it's in the rent growth phase. Everyone who's purchased has already purchased, and the people that are left behind cannot buy. Now they're fighting over the rental units that are left over, and that's why you see Sacramento ranked number 1 in the U.S. on the left. All right, questions. Neal, what about rent control risk in Sacramento? Very, very good question. I am terrified about what's happening in our state legislature in Sacramento. The last time, do you know how many votes were, what was the difference between the positive and negative votes for statewide rent control? One vote was all that stood between socialism and us. So I'm terrified about it. But there's a lot of you that want to invest in California. There's a lot of you that want to invest somewhere close. You want to be able to touch your properties. Look, it's still a great option. The other thing is, if rent control is implemented, the state level issues a set of guidelines. The cities have to follow it, but they have a lot of time to do it. And they also, each city makes its own determination on how strict they are on following that guideline. So yes, rent control could happen. And yes, in that case, it would be a big downer for Sacramento. But I think if you're going to invest in California, far and away, it's still the best market. So hopefully that answers your question. How can I get credit lines I need to invest in Sacramento? Miguel, I'll take that question offline, but you can ask me again. So what is your base? Ritesh asks a good question. What is your basis for forecasting these cities will have the best rent growth appreciation over the next 2 or 3 years? Well, this is not my basis. This is the basis for these providers. So you look at the headings there, right? It says Forbes or Trulia or Realtor.com. All you have to do is Google Realtor.com best price appreciation in 2018 or best rental growth in 2018. It'll take you a couple minutes, but you'll find the articles that I've used for these rankings. You'll know when you find them, right? Because the rankings are going to match. At the bottom of the article usually is a link that says methodology. And so they're sharing how is it that they came up with their rankings. And as you can imagine, the methodology is different from provider to provider. But it usually makes sense when I read the methodology. Okay, this is a good way of figuring out if these are the cities that are going to have the best growth. And these people have been doing it for a long time, and they tend to get it right at least 80% of the time. Okay, so Rod asks I think this is a controversial question. If they pass rent control, do you think it would go to the Supreme Court as unconstitutional? The answer is heck yeah. If they pass it at a state level, not at a city level, it's going to go to the Supreme Court. Absolutely, it will. All right, back to our list. So at number 9, we see Fort Worth. And I'm going to keep talking today about expensive cities and their buddy cities, right? Sacramento is a buddy city of the Bay Area, and that's why it's benefiting. Colorado Springs is a buddy city of Denver. It's benefiting. Well, there's no city benefiting more than Fort Worth. And we call this right in my company. We sold our Dallas properties at a handsome profit last year before, and we bought in Fort Worth. And so now we're beginning to see Fort Worth come up, and this is not the only time you're going to see Fort Worth either in that list, right? It's about 20 miles from Dallas. So a lot of the people that can no longer afford to rent in Dallas are moving over into Fort Worth. A lot of people that can't buy in Dallas are buying in Fort Worth, and that's driving that up into the market. Nashville, which is a solid city, the only really good Tennessee city, you'll see it throughout this list. Here again, Colorado Springs. Columbus, one of my favorite cities. If you must invest in the Midwest, there is no city like Columbus. I wouldn't invest anywhere in the Midwest myself. Atlanta, no surprise there. Charlotte is one of the 2 cities that shows up in North Carolina again and again. You notice that in the blue section, you saw Raleigh here. And I think you also saw Charlotte there. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. So Austin shows up, but not as hard as it was in previous years. Once again, Salt Lake City, Utah. Awesome. A lot of people ask me, what do you like about Utah, Neal? And my answer is babies. Mormons are very strict on birth control. They produce a large number of babies. The state has very high population growth. What else could be as good for rent growth and real estate as babies, right? So it's a great place to invest in. Also, Salt Lake City is low cost compared to the rest of the Western Seaboard, and as a result, a lot of technology companies are moving there. So Google, Adobe, a whole bunch of others have been moving there. And so once again, you see Fort Worth, you see a pattern there, and then Ogden, again, Utah. So Ogden is north of Utah. My favorite city in Utah is Provo, which is south of Salt Lake City. So Salt Lake, both north and south of Salt Lake City, you're seeing a pattern, and here, this one's north. Now, here's an interesting one, Lakeland. Lakeland is a city in Florida. And so it doesn't represent anything by itself in this listing. But what's important is the freeway that it's on. There's a freeway, and if you're interested in Florida, write this down. The freeway is Freeway 4, and it starts in the city of Deltona, which is 15 miles from Orlando, runs through the city of Orlando, runs for another 40 miles until it hits Lakeland, and then runs another 50 miles and hits Tampa. It's 113 miles from Deltona to Tampa, and that area is red hot. I'm going to show it to you in a snapshot in a few minutes. So Lakeland is part of that red hot path of progress. Again, Raleigh-Durham, so you start seeing the trends there. Stockton showing up in price growth. So once again, a lot of people that just can't buy in the Bay Area buying in Stockton. And then Jacksonville, surprisingly, only showed up once. This is, like Phoenix, a hot city. It's been in the listing multiple times. It's been higher, definitely slowing down. Deltona again, Orlando Metro, Raleigh again. You see the trends there. And then my favorite city in the U.S. is Provo, Utah. So 35 miles south of Salt Lake City. I haven't been able to buy anything there. The market is very tight, so I actually just finished building a 102-unit project in Provo, and I am insanely delighted by the appraisal and by how much that building is worth, and it hasn't even been handed over to us and is worth millions more. Dallas, no surprises there. Fantastic city, Dallas. Nashville, another terrific city, both for cash flow as well as for appreciation. And then in number one, no surprise, Orlando, and also Las Vegas. Las Vegas is doing really well. It showed up in this list 3 times. So if you look at the orange side, under Trulia at number 10, you see Las Vegas. Where's the other time? It showed up a second time and then a third time. So 3 times for Las Vegas, once for Reno. So the Nevada economy doing very well. So that's really the patterns. Now let's look at them at a state level, right? The state that wins this year, unquestionably, is California. 21 entries out of 80. But here's the weird thing, right? Do you see anything on the appreciation side? Sacramento and Stockton are the only 2 cities that compare with the rest of the U.S. We're done with our appreciation story, but we're not done. Simply what has happened is people can't buy, so now they're renting. So you see on the left side, look at how much California there is. And what's good news is our core cities, right? San Jose, San Francisco, San Diego, these are still great for fix and flips, but they may not be the best at this point for appreciation. And that's really the California story. At number 2 is Texas with 11 entries in there. And again, the entries are kind of sporadic. The story really is Dallas Metro. Here's Dallas Metro right there. This is Dallas Metro as well. This is Dallas again. This is Dallas Metro. This is Dallas again. And this is Dallas Metro. So 6 times that area, which is the DFW Metroplex, shows up 6 times. This is a great place to invest in. It doesn't really matter whether you're fixing, flipping. It has rent growth. It has cash flow, and it also has appreciation. You couldn't really beat Dallas. And then in Florida, very different from previous years. You're not seeing Miami. You're not seeing Tallahassee. You're not seeing Palm Beach, right? Those are all done with their appreciation stories. What you're really seeing again and again is either Orlando or Orlando Metro, or the path, the freeway that runs between Orlando and Tampa. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, 7 times, actually Lakeland, 8 times. 8 times in this list is just that 113 miles of freeway that goes from Deltona to Tampa. Very powerful trend. This is what makes people money. And then Colorado, that 70-mile pathway between Denver and Colorado Springs, hard as ever, 6 entries in the list. And finally, at number 5 is Utah, and 5 entries in the list. Salt Lake City has 3 entries. North of Salt Lake is Ogden. South of Salt Lake is Provo. This is also about a 100-mile stretch of freeways, ultra hot. And then honorable mentions, 2 of the states that didn't make it to my top 5 were North Carolina. Raleigh-Durham is very hot, and so is Charlotte. I think Charlotte was ranked twice. Raleigh-Durham was ranked 3 times. In Nevada, Las Vegas was ranked 3 times, including in number 1, a pole position given by Trulia. Very powerful metro, Las Vegas. Also has supply. A lot of these cities have no supply. Las Vegas has supply. The one city that only showed up once, I was a little bit disappointed, guys, was Reno.